Good morning, students. I am recording this video in order to share with you the part of the class that we have today. This is the introduction for our second term, in which we're going to talk about the molecular biology. This topic is is related with the topic of the first term, that was genetic, but in this case we're going to approach to the different scientific advances. So we're going to talk particularly about the molecules that inherited the genetic information. In the first term, we talk about general characteristics and how to predict the inherited of this characteristic. In this term, we're going to talk about the molecules that make possible this inheritation in the organisms. So first of all, I'm going to share with you the topics and competences for the second term. As I was saying to you, we're going to talk about the molecular biology. This is related about the genetic information and the DNA and another molecules like the RNA. We're going to talk about the functional molecules, that is RNA and different proteins that they do different activities in our cells, in our physiological functions. We're going to study how flow the genetic information, so how the information is transmitted or inherited from parental organisms to progeny. We're going to talk about the mutation. Mutation are the different changes that we could have in the DNA molecule. And the second big topic that we're going to talk is about the genetic engineering. This is related with the genetic manipulation and the different techniques, the application and the implication of the manipulation of the DNA. So how we manipulate the DNA by different scientific methods, and this is all for our topics. The related competences that we're going to work is to analyze the relationship between genes, proteins, and cellular function to explain the mechanisms that allow the flow of genetic information in the cell. The second one is to understand the different types of mutation to explain the process of generating genetic changes in populations, and finally to identify the techniques and tools of genetic manipulation to understand the application of genetic engineering. Today we're going to start with our introduction, genetic information and the DNA. So we're going to talk some vocabulary. Remember that I share with you the presentation in the platform, so you have to copy the competences and this information that is the beginning of our topics in your notebook. If you don't have the notebook, please use another notebook from the past year or sheet of papers. I don't know, you have to copy this. You have many possibilities to do it. And we're going to start with the genetic information and DNA. So, the distinctive morphological and physiological and behavioral features of each organism are known as traits. We worked this, for instance, in the last term when we was talking about, for instance, the color of the seeds in the plant P. So we could have green seeds, or we could have yellow seeds, or maybe we can have wrinkled seeds and smooth seeds, or we can have purple flowers or white flowers. So these are traits, morphological traits, but we have physiological traits too. For instance, how our cells do the metabolism, the different substances, for instance, and behavioral, remember that is comportamiento, behavioral characteristic, for instance, how different species, we're going to talk about, for instance, the tigers, they used to be very isolated, so it's normal that we only found one organism. But for instance, in lions, we can see that they have a society, a family, and they stay in a groups. So this is a behavior, and this behavior is inherited and is a trait that is contained in the genetic information. All the indications required to generate the traits of a living being are stored in the DNA. The DNA is a molecule which function is to keep the genetic information. Yes, this genetic information could be inherited from parental organisms to the progeny. Yes, in the cells, the DNA is organized into genes or information units. Each gene contains all the elements necessarily to express a functional molecule. In this case, a gene, as we were talking about this in the last term, a gene is a fragment of DNA that contains the information needed to produce a protein or RNA molecule with a specific function in our cells. So in the next class, we're going to talk about the structure of the DNA. So please join to the Zoom class. If you want to review the topics, you can watch the videos that I'm going to upload. So good afternoon and thank you for watching. Goodbye.